The initiation and control of aircraft electrical circuits is achieved by switches and relays. The operation of relays is covered in another lesson. There are a large number of different switch types in use on aircraft. They include manually operated switches, microswitches, proximity detectors, time switches, bimetallic switches, and centrifugal switches. In this lesson, we will look at manually operated switches. However, before we look at the various types of typical aircraft switches, it is important to know what defines an electrical switch and how it functions. An electrical switch is a mechanical device that connects and disconnects an electrical circuit. In its simplest form, the switch has two pieces of metal, called contacts, that touch to make the circuit. A pair of contacts is said to be closed when there is no space between them, allowing electrical current to flow from one contact to the other. When the contacts are separated by an insulating air gap, they are said to be open, and no electrical current can flow. It is worth noting that this terminology is the opposite of that used in hydraulic systems, where a closed valve prevents the flow of fluid and an open valve permits flow. A manually operated switch may be a toggle switch, a rocker switch, a push-pull switch, or more probably on modern aircraft, a switch light. The simplest toggle switch is a two-position switch with a single pair of contacts. With this type of switch, the contacts can be either closed or open. Here, you can see a number of two-position toggle switches being used to control the exterior lights on a Boeing 747. Three-position toggle switches normally have a center-off position, with the electrical power able to go to one of two services depending on the direction in which the switch is moved. This switch here, for instance, allows the pilot to select either both the upper and lower anti-collision beacons, or the lower one only. Toggle switches, depending on type, can remain in the last selected position, as all the light switches we have seen so far do, or they can be fitted with springs, so that when the operator's finger is removed, the switch moves back to the off position. These Boeing 747 pressurization outflow valve control switches are typical examples of sprung switches which return to off when released. Some toggle switches may be fitted with guards to prevent inadvertent operation. Guards are normally fitted to switches which are only operated in abnormal or emergency situations. This generator disconnect switch, for instance, is guarded to the off position. To operate the switch and disconnect the generator, the guard has first to be raised. Rocker switches operate in exactly the same manner as toggle switches, the only difference being the shape of the operating mechanism. Push and pull switches are normally only two-position, so the contacts in this type of switch are either open or closed. The switch is operated by pushing or pulling on the stem of the switch. Switch lights have largely replaced the other switch types in modern aircraft and combine the functions of a switch with the push action and an indicator light for the associated function. As with toggle switches, switch lights may be of the momentary action type, where the switch light is pressed and held to activate the service and released to deactivate it. Or they may be of the alternate action type, where the switch light is pressed once to activate a service and pressed again to deactivate it. The face of the switch light is used as an indicator, and depending on switch function and system status, any one of numerous indications may be displayed on it. For instance, on this typical Boeing fuel control panel, the fuel pump switch lights have on lights which illuminate when the associated pump is switched on and operating, and low pressure lights which illuminate should the pump fail. Some switch lights use flow bars to join lines on a schematic diagram to indicate flows. Flow bars are used here in the crossfeed valves to indicate when they are open. Should a crossfeed valve fail, then the flow bar will be replaced by an amber valve caption. Again, as with toggle switches, switch lights used to operate important abnormal or emergency services may be guarded to prevent inadvertent operation. In this case, the guard is a transparent perspex panel, which is hinged at the top and drops over the switch light. To operate the switch light, the guard is first raised, then the button can be pressed. The guarded switch lights shown here control the Boeing 767 aircraft's fuel dump system. That is the end of the lesson on manually operated switches. Here is a summary of the important points. Toggle and rocker switches can be 2 or 3 position. Switch lights combine the functions of a switch and an indicating light. Toggle switches, rocker switches and switch lights can be of the momentary action type, where the switch is only closed while the operator maintains finger pressure, or they may remain in the selected position until another selection is made. Both toggle switches and switch lights can be guarded to prevent inadvertent operation.